your father and your mother. Exodus 20 and 12. And it reads, respect your father and your mother, so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh, your Elohim, is giving you. So, what are we saying? What is Father Yahweh saying there? Let's look at a father and a mother. So the word for father, the Hebrew word for father is Ab. Everybody say Ab. Ab. And then the Hebrew word for mother is Everybody say Right. When you look at the words of father, Av, and mother, these words expand beyond what we were taught. Just your own dad and your own mom. In this portion of the scripture, it is speaking to the generations that come before you. As you can see from the pictures on the screen, we have generations of men and women. One is of a slave family, probably right after or during the time of emancipation. And then the other picture was taken from the website. It's really an awesome read concerning the first black Hebrew Israelite congregation in New York. They actually had an assembly in New York, and they were the first ones to have a yeshiva. This group was established in Harlem, New York in 1919 by Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, who established this first black synagogue called the Commandment Keepers Congregation. And he also established the first black yeshiva that trained and ordained black rabbis. He was a man of notoriety. This man taught himself Hebrew and taught other people around him, and then started bringing in people who were just from the church. When you read up on him, you find that his thought process was in coming out of the Christian church and going into the Hebrew walk. He said, looking at the book of Deuteronomy 28, he said, we are a people, the people of the book. And he also realized that because of the structure of our lives and cultural things that we were used to doing, it was more relative to the Hebrew walk than it was to a Christianese, the Catholic walk. So he was pretty awesome. You should look him up. Chief Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew. An awesome life unto Yahweh. So let's go to this word. We're going to look at the word respect. That's where we're going to kind of hang out today. In the word respect. Respect your father and your mother. So the word respect is the word kabad. Everybody say kabad. Kabad et lavika vayet amik, which is let's you honor or respect your father and your mother. So let's look at this word respect. The word kabad means to be heavy or weighty. Its root word is kavod. Anybody remember the word kavod? We use the word kavod as it being the cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. Father Yahweh kavods over his people. The heaviness and the weightiness of his covering over his people. So that's the root word of kabad, is kavod, which means esteem or heaviness. What is what Father is relaying to us through this word concerning or dealing with our parents and for parents? The word is Brown Drivers Briggs, Hebrew Concordance, H3513. And the word kabod is a primitive root, has a primitive root, as I said, of kavod. Some of the synonyms for this word kavod is to be heavy, be weighty, be grievous. It also means to be hard, to be rich, to be honorable, to be esteemed or burdensome, to be honored. So this word goes both ways. As I've taught many times before, Hebrew words often go from one end of the spectrum to another. So this word is one of those words that goes to the extreme. And a lot of times what I'm finding is that the words that do that are always words that's relative to Father Yahweh's character. That he's one end of the spectrum to the other. He says, I give life and I give death. He says, he is all white and all black. That's just absolutely far reaching, far beyond my little mind, I'm telling you, to even think that there could be all. He said, I created good and I created evil. So we see this Father's character being like this word, kavod, or kabod. Yeshua speaks in Luke 12 concerning hypocrisy. So there is a common theme in his teachings alone concerning things being right, not just looking right. He says, but being righteous, not ambiguous or hazy or unclear. Because how many know that if people look at you and they hear one thing coming out of your mouth, but they see another walk, things are ambiguous. People don't really know how to take you. They don't know what to say you are. They don't know how to say you are. They can't proclaim anything concerning you because your walk is so ambiguous. Your walk is so hazy. Sometimes you're on, sometimes you're off. Sometimes you're good, sometimes you're bad. Sometimes, it's too much. Too many times we have that kind of issue within our walk. He says to his Talmudim to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees. What are we getting ready to go into? Unleavened bread. He says beware of the sin of the leaven of the Pharisees, because they talk about something but they do another thing. So what he would say to them is do what they say, because they're teaching you the Torah. Do that. But don't do as they do, because they're too ambiguous. They're too hazy. They say one thing and they do another. He was constantly telling them, his Talmudim, to make their walk mimic their talk. So let's look at Luke 12:48. And it says, but he who did not know, yet did what desired flogging, shall be beaten with few. Now what he's saying here is that you don't know, but there's still a beating that is required unto you. Why? Because the wages of sin is death. Period. He stops there. He doesn't say, but if you don't know any better, it's okay. But what he's saying here is you're still going to be flogged. You're still going to be beat, even though you don't know better. But he said you will be beat with few. And everyone to whom much is given, from him much shall be demanded. And to whom much has been entrusted, from him much shall be asked. To whom much is given, much will be required. So let's look. We're going to look at this word, respect, and the understanding of what Father Yahweh was saying concerning respect or honor your mother and your father. Many times words are relative to the culture of the people in accordance to the era that they live in, the geographical area that they're in. As I've asked you many times before, what did the word gay mean 40 years ago? Happy. It meant to be joyful. Now, what does it mean now? And we are only dealing with 40 years. A 40-year time frame. Now let's look at what 40, let's talk about 40 generations. 40 generations. Can we really take the words of our Messiah and completely understand them from using today's vernacular? I think we would be really robbing ourselves of some wealth of information, because we can't do that. We have to understand his word from his culture, from that time frame. After coming into this Hebrew walk, most of us found out that that was what exactly had happened, that we had received the lies. We had received things that were not true because of 40 generations. So let's look at two very different societies, two very different cultures of people concerning this word respect. And we're going to go back to the word and look at the word respect again, which have impact our thought processes here where we are in the States. So let's look at the Greek culture. So I thought, what are some automatic characteristics that most people would think of when one mentions Greek? So I put some things down and I thought, yeah, these are things that just off the top of my head, when I thought of the Greeks, this was something I thought of. Universities. I thought of many deities. I thought of gymnasiums. I don't know if you guys know, but the Olympics is from the Greek culture. And that people used to take part in these games. And that it was the strongest, the ones who won, who were those who were the strongest and the survivors of these games. Marathons, those started, that's all right from the Greek Hellenistic culture. Then there was the theater, oh, the theater. That's Greek right there, thespianism. People on stage, people then building big coliseums and having shows where people can go and eat dinner in the evening and come down to the Coliseum and watch a show. Then I thought of white columns, buildings with white columns. They were big into white stone buildings with columns that was attributed to higher understanding, higher learning, and also of looking at the white being a form of, as they classified, as purity. So now, let's look at another very different culture, and that is Hebrew. What do you think of? And why did someone say, uh-oh, when I said Hebrew? See? Isn't that interesting? But no one said, uh-oh, when I mentioned Greek. So we're going to go, that is absolutely my point right here. Hebrew. When I thought about Hebrew, I thought about chosen people. I thought about the biblical calendar, the biblical laws. They call them the laws of Moses. I thought about the kosher laws, the dietary laws. Then I thought about the Sabbath and the Sabbaths, the annual Sabbaths. So which would you say between these two cultures that the U.S. culture mirrors? What would you say? Absolutely. Absolutely. The Greek. So let's look at it. The U.S. is big in the area of higher learning. Within Winston-Salem, this is just mind-blowing. Within Winston-Salem, which is only 132 square miles, has 9 institutions of higher learning.
Wow. Whoa.
9. 132 square miles.
Wow.
9 institutions of higher learning. Because the U.S. was established by people running from religious persecution, this culture accepts all deities of any people. Just come on, bring your poor, bring your tired, bring your lame. All immigrants. People who come to this country can call on the name of whatever deity, whatever God they serve. Then there are within this same amount of square mileage, 11 plus gymnasiums.
Wow.
Places where you can just go. And those are just names, organizations of gymnasiums. So you've got the Rush. There may be more than just one Rush. You've got about 6 or 7 YMCAs. All of these places are Planet Fitness, and it's like, and they show these people pumped up, you know what I'm saying? Women on these billboards with all of these, six-pack, which they don't tell you that. That's heredity. That's, you inherit a six-pack. Some people just never gonna have a six-pack. But in the United States of America, they say everybody should have a six-pack. Everybody should be able to look like they can go on television, and that they can mirror all of these people. It's all about outward appearance. And then there's the part that is a healthy lifestyle. So I don't knock it. Y'all know I like to work out. So it's a healthy lifestyle. It's a society where looks matter. Movies, television, music stars are revered and looked upon as the norm. Opposed to the true normality of other parts of the world. A size 0? That's not a norm. What is 0? That's null and void. A 0 is nothing. So if you are a size 0, you're nothing. That's 0. You're not. Think of it. That's ridiculous for us, for a society to even have a size 0.
Yeah, it is.
But that tells you our culture of people and how much it has changed within the last 40 to 60 years. Did you guys know that Marilyn Monroe was like a size 12?
Yes,
and she was classified as the finest woman on television.
Yeah.
And she was a size 12. Now she would be classified as a little fatty. And they would be telling her that she need to lose weight. You're not going to make it in this business being a size 12, baby.
Yeah.
So she'd have to lose weight and be all emaciated like all of the rest of the folks that go on the red carpet. But that is the problem when you deal with a Greek Hellenistic ambiguous culture. So then, and the sad part is that we have our children are looking at this, and then they're aspiring to be that size. It's much more important to this society how our body looks opposed to what's our ethical and moral standing. Many times people are judged first by how they look. I had the opportunity when I worked in Washington, D.C. I was after Lori was born, I decided not to take, I didn't want to, when I got ready to go back to work, I didn't want to take a job that was really pressing because, you know, the kids were young, I had a young baby at home, child at home, and I didn't want to get into a job that was going to be taking up a whole lot of my time. So I took a position, it was as a receptionist. I sat out there in the front, answered my little phone, and that was it. Then they realized that I could do a little more. And they started piling more work on. All of a sudden, I'm not just a receptionist. I'm doing all these other things on top of it. So at one point, I got a call from a friend of ours who was going to church with us. And she said, I have a great position. Somebody is in need of a legal, I don't know what they called it. No, it was a legal typist. So anyway, I went on and I said, yeah, I'm sure, I don't care, I'm up for it. When she told me the salary, I said, yes. Tell him I will interview for that job. Definitely so. The job was an upwards frame of probably about $50,000, starting you off about $50,000. Now this was Lori, this was 23 years ago. So I'm like, yes, you kidding me? Yeah, I'll go in. And so she said, the job is going to probably need for you to type, they're saying 70 words a minute. So I'm thinking to myself, well, on a good day, I can probably type about 50 words a minute, 45, 50 words a minute. I said, but you know what? I'm going to go on over here. You know what? I'm going to try for, $50,000. So I go on to the interview, put my little blue suit on, all professional and everything. That used to be the time where, we wore blue suits to an interview. So I put my little blue suit on, my little blue heels, and go on over there. I walk in the door, announce myself, sit down, and it was for a law firm. For a black law firm that actually did handle legal cases for government agencies. So they were, you walked in this place, it was like, marble, hard mahogany wood, and like architecture, just gorgeous. So I sit down, and I'm sitting there with my little briefcase and everything, and the man comes out back, and he says, you're hired. Come on back. I could have been the dumbest person absolutely in the world. But that man was willing to give me that $50,000 salary. Just because I had on my little blue suit, because I looked good, and I looked like I knew what I was. You're hired. And then I said, okay, can we talk a little bit first? So we went back in the office and sat down and started talking, and I realized that the typing that they were going to have me doing, the job was not going to be a good fit. I'd be back in a little room, and that's all I would be doing is typing manuscripts all day long. I'm a people kind of person. I need to see people. If I don't see people, I will go out. Ask my husband. I will go out of my house, get in the car, and go drive to see people. So what I'm saying in that is that we have a society that just looks matter. No matter what your ethical approach is, no matter whether you have a brain in your head, it doesn't matter. It's how you look. But now, let's look at the Hebrew classification on the Hebrew characteristics. Chosen people. The biblical calendar, this country does not have anything. Most times when you go to your job and say, I keep the holy days of the scripture, here's my feast letter, this is the time I'm going to need off, they're looking at you like, but they go right to, oh, you're Jewish. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they said.
And then the biblical laws. When you say, I keep the laws of the scripture, I'm a commandment keeper, first thing they think of, oh, wow, you're Jewish. Okay, cool. But does this country keep the biblical laws? No. Does it keep the biblical calendar? No. Are they Father Yahweh's chosen people? That's a little, we're just going to leave that there. Dietary laws. The dietary laws. Does this country keep dietary laws? No. They will eat anything. If it's crawling, they'll eat it. It doesn't matter. If it's walking, man, sometimes it's walking, they'll eat that too. I mean, so we're looking at our society is so far the biblical Sabbath. We know many times each of us at some point within our career have run into issues with our jobs concerning the keeping of the biblical Sabbath. So we know that this country is not used to doing that, or the holy days that are in the Word. So I'm thinking, I didn't do the stats on this, but I'm thinking it's got to be less than 10% of the population of this country that do any of those. Because we have a lot of even our European Jewish brethren that don't keep the kosher laws. We've been in line with them, talking to them, and they've been putting pork chops and everything on their plate. Like, what are you doing? Well, we eat kosher. And they're looking at us like, you're more Jewish than we are, yeah? And then the biblical calendar. When we look at these things, our country does not mimic the Hebrew lifestyle. I'm saying all of this to get back to the understanding of that word respect and honor. So let's look at this word respect. It has a Latin origin. So we know the word that it was translated into, it really should have used an origin that was Hebrew, which would have been kabad, the word that I gave you. But listen what the Latin origin says. To respect, and I went to a website that gives you etymology of words. So it would be the origin, and they tell you where the word originated from. And it says, to respect the person was to show undue bias. Now listen to this. Undue bias towards or against, they had that part right, towards or against, further reaching, of the extent, one side of the spectrum to the other, based on regard for the outward circumstances of a person.
Oh my.
Now that's the origin of the word respect from a Roman-Greco mindset. That to respect a person was to show undue bias towards or against, based on regard for the outward circumstances of a person. So when grandma and grandpa says or does something, you feel swayed towards their mindset because of the respect that you have for them. Is this Torah or is this Halakha? Definitely so. So let's look at Hebrew versus the Western mindset, their culture. The American culture, as we said, is one that mimics the Roman-Greco culture. One of higher institutions of higher learning, white columns, the outward physical appearance. We see this in every aspect of our society. On entertainment, we see it in commerce, in government. So where does this leave us, the people who choose to be set apart? To the one true and living Yah. Living in a society that is inwardly uncommitted and outwardly committed society. Y'all get that? An inwardly uncommitted, outwardly committed society. How do we sustain our spiritual integrity while living in this strange land and maintain a substantial relationship with the Most High? This reminds me of Psalms 137 and 4. and seeing that our culture is so very different from the Western mindset. We sometimes find ourselves being in this culture. We find ourselves bouncing back and forth between cultures, taking the mask on and putting the mask on, taking the mask off and putting the mask on, bouncing back between cultures. Why? Because we're in this world. But remember, Yeshua said, we are not of this world. What does this have to do with the fifth commandment? You're like, good gosh, you're going all the way down 40 and up 85 and back down around again. But it's important that we understand the culture that we live in and what drives us to think a certain way. So now what we have to do as people of the Torah, as Talmudim of Yeshua, our Messiah, is to be transformed and let our minds be renewed. So everything applying to the wrong meaning of a word will cause irrefutable damage. Certain overwhelming damage that sometimes we can't undo. Having a skewed translation could mean life or death. Say, for instance, I was in ROTC, and we learned in ROTC how to put together, take apart, and put together our weapon. And at one point, after we got really, while we were really in there, really good, we had to put a blindfold on. And Lamar, you probably know about this. We had to put a blindfold on, and we had to, and all of the pieces of this weapon was sitting out in front of you. You had to be able to put those pieces together, blindfold. Now, if someone did not know what they were doing, would you want them putting your pieces together to your weapon, and then they say, the enemy's on his way, here they're coming in the door, and you got to shoot that weapon? If they just missed one piece, that weapon, that could blow back up in your face. And instead of killing your enemy, it kill you. The parachute. Say, for instance, you have people who put parachutes together. Now, I got to go up in this plane. They decided for themselves that they're going to put this, I'm just going to take a shortcut and put this parachute together. I don't need that piece of wire right there. I don't need that piece. Those pieces, what are those strings for? They get all the parachute together and they realize 2 or 3 things are still sitting out there that I missed. Would you want to put that parachute on and jump out that plane? No. Because there's a total difference of jumping out that plane and floating safely to earth, or jumping out that plane and hitting that earth at about 2,000 miles per hour. So when we look at the words of Yeshua, the words of our Yah in the Torah, we have to look at them in the same way. Do I want to mistake a meaning of a word and be accepting of that when it could cause life or death? I don't know that that's the smart thing to do. So as I was doing this teaching, I thought, Father, why did you use the word kabod? See, because I could understand yada. The word kabod means, as I said, heaviness, weighty. It means esteem, there being a burden, burdensome. But yada means to know. And it means to know on a personal standpoint, intimacy. So why is it, Father Yahweh, I thought, wow, we could truly get the understanding of it if the word was yada, to know your mother and your father. Because if you know them, and if you know that they're not righteous, I wouldn't walk like them. And if I know them, and if I know that they're walking righteous, then I can follow their walk. But then as I looked at that, I said, the word kabod, in looking at it, it means to be in a position of heaviness, a position of honor and weightiness. Who would those people be? Who would be those people that would be in that position? Leviticus 19:3 says, each one of you should fear. Now, Father Yahweh uses the word fear. Should fear his mother and his father and guard my Sabbaths. I am Yahweh your Elohim. I'm like, wow, Father. So, the word for fear being Brown Drivers Briggs, Hebrew Concordance 3372. It is Yareh, which means to fear or reverence, to honor or respect. So, but this was the thing that I noticed, and I thought, oh man, Father, I never noticed this before. This is so awesome. Notice that the command for keeping the Shabbat in the fourth command is the fourth command. And then, right after it, it says, respect your mother and your father. Wow. And then there in Leviticus 19, he says the same thing. Fear your mother and your father and keep the Shabbat. Wow. So I thought, why? Who is responsible for each dwelling to keep and guard the Shabbat? Yo, go ahead and say it. Who's responsible for that? The mother and father. The children just don't go start doing stuff on their own accord. The mother and father are responsible. The parents. So it is so perfect for the Most High to say, keep the Sabbath, and immediately say, respect those who guard the Sabbath in your home and your community. This is vital for the existence of Israel, because as we read further, in that fifth commandment, we find that it says that we need to do this. Why? So that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. So we are called. This is a promise to us. A promise of the land inheritance. Father said that this land will flow with milk and honey. He said, and his eyes are always on that place. This is what Yahweh is saying. For his people concerning the respect and honor towards our father and our mother, those who teach you to keep and guard the Sabbath, you hold with respect and honor. Those who don't, you are not to hold what they say in high esteem concerning the Torah. We get it mixed up, and we get to a place where we say, well, if my mother and father, I'm supposed to respect them, then that means I'm supposed to do what they say. No, no, no. That's the Latin, the Greek, Roman-Greco way of thinking about it. But what we are called to do, that if your mother and father are teaching you about keeping the Sabbath of Yahweh, keeping his commandments, that we are to put them in high regard. We are to esteem what they give us. We are to respect and honor the words that come out of their mouth. But if they don't, we don't respect and honor that. This is why Yeshua said in Matthew 28 and 12, Matthew 12, 48 through 50, and then Mark 3:32, 3:32 through 35, and then Luke 8:20 through 21. Messiah is telling us that those who do the will of my Father, those who are the keepers and doers of my word, are those who will guard my Sabbath. And then he will teach, and then will teach their households the same. The words that come from their mouth is what you respect and honor. not the words of those non-doers and the non-believers, no matter who they are. The definition of a believer, look at this, y'all. The definition of a believer in Messiah is this: to trust, have faith in, to be certain of, to have confidence in, to accept as true, and then to rely on. Now, you can ask your friends, do you trust him? Do you have faith in him? So let's look at Matthew 12, 48 through 50. But he answering said to the one who spoke to him, who is my mother and who is my brothers? And having stretched out his hand towards his taught ones, he said, see, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the desire of my Father who is in the heavens is my brother and my sister and my mother. And then in Mark 3, 32 through 35, he said, and a crowd was sitting around him, and they said to him, see, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. But he answered them, saying, who is my mother and my brothers? And looking about on those sitting around, he said, see, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the desire of Elohim is my mother and my sister and my mother. Notice he doesn't say those who read the desires, those who hear the desires, but he says those who do the desires, those who are doers. And then Luke 8, 20 and 21, and it was reported to him saying, your mother and your brothers are standing outside wishing to see you. And answering, he says to them, my mother and my brothers are those who are hearing the word of Elohim and doing it. We have got to be in a place where we understand this completely. Because the word of Yahweh, we're going to go to what is the word? What are they doing? What are they hearing and understanding? As a people set apart to the Most High, we are to hear the word. It's to go, we're told to Shema. It's to go into our ear, into our minds and our hearts, and then we're to walk them out. So here, John 1 through 5 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All came to be through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. In him was life, and the life was the light of man. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And then he goes on in John, down in 9 through 14, and he said, and he was the true light, which enlightens every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, and the world did not know him. He's telling you, the world did not know who Yeshua was. So they're not going to know and understand who you are. They're going to look at you and say, what in the world? Who are you? What are you doing? What is that? What kind of religion is that again? But he goes on to say, but as many as receive him, to them he gave the authority. I want y'all to put that word right, dig it, let that word authority dig in there. To become children of Elohim, to those believing in his name, who were born and not of blood, nor of the desire of the flesh, nor of the desire of man, but of Elohim. And the Word became flesh and pitched his tent among us. And we saw his esteem. Esteem as the only, there's that word, esteem, kabod, kavod, of and only brought forth of a Father. Complete, wholly complete, favor in favor, and in truth. So when we talk to people, and when people say, oh, well, but I don't believe that we have to do that anymore. But the word says right here that he was the completeness of the word. So if we get rid of any part of the word, we're getting rid of our Mashiach. We're getting rid of our Messiah. Is that right to do? We have to be skillful in how we approach people, especially when they feel that they are walking out or that they are believing in the word, that we have to have them understand that it's the whole word. So what is the bottom line and the take home of this whole concerning honoring and respecting your father and your mother? The fifth commandment is far beyond the understanding of what we've been taught. It is understanding that those who guide you in the way of the Torah should be respected and esteemed. They should be honored. But those who do not keep the Torah, their opinions and their ways should not be regarded above the righteous walk of the Torah. Does it matter whether they are father, mother, grandpa, grandma, mom and them, aunts, uncles? Those who teach us how to keep the Shabbat are worthy of respect and honor. They are our fathers and our mothers. From what I can see, when Yeshua spoke concerning this, he was giving clarity. When he said, "Who is my mother? Who is my father?" He was giving clarity to the fifth commandment. Yet another instance when Messiah brings greater understanding to the Torah. He came as the guarantor of the inheritance of our fathers. When we do this, then he will be blessed. We'll be blessed. And when we understand that that's what he is, we'll be blessed. And that the land inheritance of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, will be there. We sometimes have to take on that fight and be a light to the earthly fathers and mothers concerning the walk, true walk of obedience, the righteousness that we're called to, and to stand as a witness. We're called to stand as a witness to people. Then Yeshua will say to us, and he will reach out to us and say, "You are my mother, you are my brothers," because you are those who are not just hearing the word of Elohim, but you're doing it. We have to be a light. We have to show forth that light within us. In the Torah portion this week, in talking about the burnt offerings, what does he say concerning that? And the burnt offerings that's in the temple, in the tabernacle. See, that tabernacle is a vision of us, of our bodies. That's why Rabbi Shaul said, "Know ye not that your body is the temple of the living Elohim?" So what is supposed to burn? Y'all tell me, Talmudim, what is supposed to burn within your temple always?
Candles.
The light. The light. The Torah. The Torah is called to burn within us. And it says that light is never to go out. It's never to be diminished. It's never to be covered up. It's never to be sheltered. I mean, even Yeshua said, what in the world is a light? You take a lamp and put it under a bushel. It's not showing any light. No, you take it and you put it up so that it can bring light to the whole area where it is. That's what we've been called, to be light. Because there's plenty of darkness out there. And you're going to have plenty of people out there that try to tell you that, no, you're supposed to hear what your grandparents, you're supposed to do what your grandparents did, you're supposed to follow in the way that your mother and father did, you're supposed to do this, no, we are supposed to do what the word of Yahweh calls us to do. We have been called to be light, to give light to the Sabbath, to give light to the Torah, to give light to his feast days, to give light to us as a walk of Hebrew, set apart people, a set apart nation, respecting and honoring the words that come from the mouth of those who are outside of the commandments of our Elohim. Is that Torah?
Yes, ma'am.
Or is it Halakha?
That's Torah.
Is that Torah? Or is it, listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. Respecting and honoring the words that come from the mouths of those who are not walking in the commandments. Is that Torah or is that Halakha? Can we get Father Yahweh right?
God have mercy. Mercy, son, I'm so
Gonna, everybody on the front of the definition of the fun of 30,000 under no.
God have mercy. Yeah. Mercy, son, I'm so sick.